Hi friends, I'm Uma Shankar Pandey and this is the Dr. USB channel. Welcome to another video in the Roots of Indian Knowledge series. When we talk of yoga, which is sometimes incorrectly pronounced as yoga, we generally think of the wonderful physical postures which gives us bodily flexibility and helps in physical exercising. But the yoga philosophy is much more profound, much more deeper than that. It believes that the reason for pain and suffering is because we identify more with the thinking mind. When we say I'm happy, I'm sad, or I'm angry, basically I'm identifying with these temporary mental states. The yoga philosophy teaches us how to go beyond the thinking mind and look into our true self, which is the true consciousness. So yoga is about stopping this continuous mental chatter and trying to look into your true self, which is the end of all pain and suffering. Let us explore yoga philosophy, the roots of Indian knowledge. To understand and experience the essence of the real self, we need a pure heart and a calm mind. Mastering the body is essential for achieving concentration. Yoga philosophy, with its foundational text Patañjali's Yoga Sutra, represents one of the 6 orthodox systems of Indian thought, the Shaddarshan. It presents yoga as an 8-fold path, Ashtanga Yoga, leading to the cessation of fluctuations of the mind. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha from Patañjali's Yoga Sutra. When we think I'm angry, I'm happy, or I'm sad, we are identifying with temporary states of mind rather than realizing that we as pure consciousness are beyond these temporary experiences. In essence, Yoga's Chitta Vritti Nirodha means that through yoga we seek to still the mind's constant chatter. Chitta consists of 3 components: manas, which is the mind's faculty for receiving sensory impressions and processing information; buddhi, which is the intellect or discriminative faculty responsible for reasoning, judgment and discernment; ahankar, which is the ego. It identifies with the body and mind, creating the sense of I and mine. The self by its very nature is pure consciousness, untouched by the limitations of the body or the fluctuations of the mind. Yet in ignorance, it mistakenly identifies with the chitta. The goal of yoga is to bring these fluctuations of chitta under control and still the chitta. Vyasa's Yoga Bhasya was written in the 4th to 5th century CE. Vachespati Mishra's Tattva Vaisharadi is a commentary on Vyasa's Yoga Bhashya, is one of the most detailed and respected commentaries. Vijnana Bhikshu's Yoga Vartik was written in the 16th century, is an essential commentary on Vyasa's Yoga Bhashya. The Yoga Sara Sangraha is another useful manual of the yoga philosophy. Patanjali's Yoga Sutra is structured into 4 distinct sections. Samadhi Pada is the chapter on absorption, focuses on the very essence and goal of yoga, which is the control and stilling of the mind. It explains the nature of samadhi, which is a state of deep concentration or meditative absorption. Sadhana Pada is the chapter on practice. This section deals with the practical aspects of yoga, especially focusing on Kriya Yoga, which consists of disciplined action, self-study and devotion to a higher power. Vibhuti-pada, the chapter on powers, delves into the deeper inward practice of yoga and the extraordinary abilities which are the vibhutis that can be attained through prolonged practice. Kaivalya-pada is concerned with the nature of liberation or Kaivalya. It describes the ultimate goal of yoga, which is the complete and final release of the self, which is consciousness, from the bondage of material existence. Chitta undergoes 5 types of modifications, which are known as Vrittis. These 5 Vrittis shape the way Chitta engages with the world and constructs our experience of reality. The first is Pramana. This modification arises from perception, inference, and verbal testimony. These forms of cognition allow us to know the objects of the world as they truly exist. Viparyaya, or invalid cognition, results in false knowledge. In this case, the modifications of chitta corresponds to no real object. Such cognitions are illusions, giving rise to incorrect perceptions of reality. Vikalpa, or conceptualization, are abstract ideas or verbal constructs that do not correspond to any existing object. For instance, phrases like the hole in the sky or the horse's egg are mere grammatical formations. Smriti, or memory, is another modification of chitta where past experiences or knowledge are recalled. Nidra, or sleep, is a modification of chitta. It is not simply the absence of mental activity but a specific function of the mind in which awareness is temporarily suspended. Controlling chitta means controlling these ongoing modifications. It does not involve suppressing or eliminating chitta but directing it towards a single focus, allowing it to maintain one's steady modification or object. This sustained focus is what we call concentration, and it unfolds through 5 distinct stages. There are 5 distinct levels of mental states, or chitta bhumi, shaped by the varying dominance of the 3 elements: sattva, which is the element of goodness; rajas, the element of action; tamas, the element of ignorance within the chitta. These levels are known as kshipta, which is restlessness; mudha, dullness; vikshipta, distraction; ekagra, focus; and niruddha, fully restrained. In the first level, known as the kshipta, the mind is dominated by rajas and tamas, constantly pulled towards sensory objects and the pursuit of power. It jumps from one thing to another, never finding rest. This state is entirely unsuited for yoga. The second level, mudha, arises from an excess of tamas. In this state, the mind tends towards ignorance, vice, and sleep, making it sluggish and unresponsive to higher awareness. At the third level, which is the vikshipta, the mind is largely free from tamas and only influenced by rajas. In this state, the mind can perceive objects clearly and leans towards virtue and knowledge. However, this stage involves temporary concentration, where a focus on an object is quickly followed by distraction. It cannot be called yoga. The fourth level, ekagra, occurs when chitta is cleansed of rajas and sattva predominates. Here the mind achieves prolonged concentration on an object, allowing its true nature to be revealed and preparing for the cessation of mental modifications. At the final level, niruddha, which is fully restrained, all mental functions cease, including concentration itself. This is the state where all mental activities are fully arrested, leading to complete stillness. When ekagra, the state of concentration, becomes permanent, it is called sampragyata yoga, or the meditative trance. In this state, there is a clear and distinct awareness of the object of contemplation. It is also referred to as samapatti or sampragyata samadhi. The state of niruddha is known as asampragyata yoga or asampragyata samadhi. Here all mental modifications cease and the mind no longer perceives or thinks of anything. This is the trance of complete absorption. Sampragyata samadhi is divided into 4 types. Savitarka samadhi. In this stage, the mind focuses on a gross physical object from the external world, such as the image of a deity. Once the mind grasps the nature of this object, it moves to more subtle objects. Savichara samadhi is where the mind concentrates on subtle elements like the tanmatras or the subtle essences of the physical elements. This level of concentration deepens the understanding of the underlying nature of these finer realities. Sananda samadhi is to focus on even subtler objects such as the senses themselves. The mind in this state penetrates the real essence of the senses. Sasmita samadhi, in this final type, the object of concentration is asmita, or the ego substance, with which the self is typically identified. Through this stage, the true nature of the ego is realized. Ultimately, the mind becomes free from all thoughts and enters asampragyata samadhi, which is the highest form of yoga. In this state, all mental modifications cease and the mind no longer rests on any object. This final stage or samadhi marks the cessation of the external world's influence on the yogi. Here the self remains in its purest essence as pure consciousness. It is not easy for a person to reach the final stage of liberation due to 5 impurities or klesas that afflict the Atman. The first is ignorance or avidya, which prevents one from discerning between the eternal and the non-eternal, blinding the individual to the true nature of reality. False identification with the ego, asmita. This mistaken notion leads a person to believe they are the particular individual, compelling them to say, "Here I am," as if they were solely that limited self. Attachment, raga. Attachment to pleasures reinforce this sense of being a distinct individual, binding one to personal identity. Aversion or dvesha, hatred of and aversion to pain, further entrench this attachment to individuality. The 8 limbs of yoga serve as the path to the ultimate realization of the Atman in the highest state of samadhi, where the mind, the chitta, is completely free from all its forms and modifications. They are yama, which is restraint or ethical guidelines; niyama, observance of self-discipline; asana, physical postures; pranayam, breath control; pratyahar, withdrawal of the senses; dharana, concentration; dhyana, meditation; and samadhi, absorption or enlightenment. The first discipline, yama, includes the following principles: ahimsa, the practice of non-violence and abstaining from causing harm to any living being; satya, truthfulness in being, thought and speech; asteya, refraining from stealing; brahmacharya, the control of desires and passions; and aparigraha, avoiding the acceptance of unnecessary gifts or possessions from others. The second discipline, niyam, involves cultivating the following positive habits: Saucha, which is the purification both external through cleansing the body and consuming pure food, and internal by fostering good emotions; Santosha, contentment with what life offers; Tapas, the practice of penance; Swadhyaya, regular study of sacred texts; and Ishwar Pranidhana, meditation on and surrender to God. Asana is the discipline of the body, involving the practice of steady and comfortable postures. Various types of asanas include Padmasana, Virasana, Bhadrasana and others, which should be learned under the guidance of experienced teachers. Pranayam is the practice of regulating the breath. It involves suspending the breath either after exhalation, which is Rechak, after inhalation, which is Purak, or by retaining the breath, which is Kumbhak. Pratyahar involves the withdrawal of the senses from their external objects and bringing them under control of the mind. When the senses are fully mastered by the mind, they no longer follow their usual external stimuli but instead align with the mind's focus. The final 3 are internal to yoga. Dharana is a mental discipline that involves holding or fixing the mind on a specific object. Dhyana refers to the continuous, unbroken flow of thoughts around the object of attention, maintaining steady focus without interruption or distraction. Through dhyana, the true nature of the contemplated object is gradually revealed. Samadhi or concentration is the final step in the practice of yoga. In this state, the mind becomes so completely absorbed in the object of contemplation that it loses all awareness of itself and merges entirely with the object. Thanks for staying along, friends. As always, it was a delight having you here. I'll be back with another video very soon. Till then, have a great time.